Before the first shot of World War II was fired, American banks were already financing the German war machine. American corporations were supplying the technology that would build Hitler's factories. And American immigration policy, designed to keep certain Europeans out, helped push desperate, displaced people straight into the arms of Nazi recruiters. Here is the uncomfortable truth that most history books leave on the cutting room floor. The United States did not simply fail to stop Hitler's rise. In measurable, documented ways, it accelerated it. But here is where the story truly begins. How did American capital flow directly into the infrastructure that made the Third Reich possible? Why did Washington's own foreign policy decisions create a vacuum that Hitler exploited perfectly? What single military and industrial reversal transformed the United States from enabler to destroyer? And who were the American decision-makers whose choices, made thousands of miles from Berlin, shaped the fate of 70 million people? The answers begin not in Europe, but on Wall Street, nearly a decade before the war. In 1924, American banker Charles Dawes engineered what became known as the Dawes Plan, a financial rescue package that funneled approximately $800 million in American loans into a collapsing German economy. The intent was stability. The result was something far more dangerous. Those loans rebuilt German industrial infrastructure, the very steel mills, chemical plants, and manufacturing facilities that would later produce Wehrmacht tanks, Luftwaffe aircraft, and the ammunition that killed American soldiers. Standard Oil of New Jersey supplied Germany with synthetic fuel patents under a cartel agreement with IG Farben that continued even after the war began. IBM's German subsidiary, Die Hamag, provided the punch card tabulation systems the Nazi regime used to catalog Jewish populations with lethal efficiency. Ford's German operations remained productive well into the conflict. These were not rogue actors. These were deliberate business decisions made by some of the most powerful corporations in American history. Decisions whose consequences played out in concentration camps and on European battlefields. But American money was only one part of what Hitler needed. The other part was political oxygen, and Washington helped provide that too. The Immigration Act of 1924, passed overwhelmingly by the United States Congress, established strict national origin quotas that reduced Jewish immigration from Eastern Europe to a trickle. In practice, this meant that hundreds of thousands of Jews attempting to flee persecution in the late 1920s and 1930s had almost nowhere to go. The quota for Germany and Austria combined was set at roughly 27,000 per year, and even that number was frequently not filled, because State Department consular officers applied additional bureaucratic barriers. Hitler himself referenced American immigration law approvingly in his writings, citing it as evidence that racial selection in national policy was internationally accepted. Meanwhile, the Great Depression had triggered political radicalization across Europe. In Germany specifically, unemployment reached 30% by 1932. Into that desperation, Hitler offered industrial revival, national pride, and a villain to blame. The economic infrastructure rebuilt with American loans gave him the resources to make those promises appear credible, and to eventually fulfill them through rearmament and forced labor. So the conditions were set. But the moment Hitler consolidated absolute power had a precise trigger, and it happened faster than almost anyone anticipated. By January 1933, Hitler was chancellor. By August 1934, following the death of President Hindenburg, he had absorbed the presidency and declared himself Führer. Within 18 months of taking office, he had dismantled the Weimar Republic entirely, dissolving political parties, purging the military leadership, and establishing the Gestapo as an internal surveillance apparatus. Rearmament began in earnest in 1935, violating the Treaty of Versailles openly and without meaningful international consequence. Germany remilitarized the Rhineland in 1936. Austria was annexed in 1938. The Sudetenland followed. Each step was a test, and each test was passed without serious opposition. Through all of this, the United States maintained formal diplomatic relations with Berlin, and American businesses continued operating on German soil. The State Department received detailed intelligence reports on Nazi atrocities as early as 1933. They were acknowledged, filed, and largely ignored. The turning point, when Washington finally recognized what it had helped create, did not come from Europe at all. It came from the Pacific, and it arrived on a Sunday morning. December 7, 1941. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor killed 2,403 Americans and destroyed or damaged 19 naval vessels. 4 days later, Hitler declared war on the United States, a decision military historians still debate as one of his most catastrophic strategic miscalculations. He was not obligated to do so under the Tripartite Pact. Japan had attacked first, and the treaty only required mutual defense. But Hitler believed American industrial capacity was already committed against him, and he calculated, incorrectly, that Japan would neutralize the United States in the Pacific long enough to matter. What he failed to account for was the arithmetic of American manufacturing. Between 1941 and 1945, the United States produced 300,000 aircraft, 86,000 tanks, 8,800 naval vessels, and 2.4 million military trucks. The Soviet Union received 400,000 American trucks through Lend-Lease alone, vehicles that provided the logistical backbone for the Red Army's westward advance. American steel, American petroleum, and American logistics did not simply support the Allied war effort. They mechanically overwhelmed the German capacity to resist. But production alone does not win wars. Somebody had to decide where to apply that overwhelming force, and that decision was anything but simple. The strategic debate over where to strike first consumed Allied commanders throughout 1942 and into 1943. Churchill pushed for North Africa and the Mediterranean, a peripheral approach designed to stretch German supply lines and avoid the catastrophic casualties of a direct channel crossing. American generals, particularly Army Chief of Staff George Marshall, argued for a direct assault on France as early as 1943. Roosevelt ultimately sided with Churchill. The compromise produced Operation Torch in November 1942, the Allied invasion of North Africa, which by May 1943 had resulted in the capture of 275,000 Axis troops, the largest single prisoner takes in Stalingrad. Sicily fell in August 1943. Italy followed. The Italian campaign pinned down German divisions that could not be redeployed to the Eastern Front or to France. When D-Day finally came on June 6, 1944, 156,000 Allied troops crossing on a 50-mile front, supported by 11,000 aircraft and 7,000 naval vessels. German reserves were already depleted, their commanders divided about where the real blow would land, partly due to Operation Bodyguard. The Allied deception campaign that convinced Berlin the Normandy landings were a feint. The beaches were taken. But the war's final chapter was not decided on the coast of France. It was decided in a collapsing city 600 miles to the east. By April 1945, Berlin was encircled. The Soviet Red Army closed from the east. American and British forces had crossed the Rhine. On April 30th, with Soviet troops less than 500 meters from his bunker, Adolf Hitler died by suicide. The Third Reich, which had promised 1,000 years, lasted 12. What remains when you trace the full arc of this history is a portrait of profound, tragic irony. American capital rebuilt Germany's industrial foundation in the 1920s. American immigration law provided Hitler with a propaganda reference point in the 1930s. American corporate relationships sustained German war production into the early years of the conflict. And then American manufacturing capacity, American logistical planning, and American military sacrifice became the primary instruments of the Reich's destruction. The United States did not simply defeat Hitler. It had been, in ways its leaders never intended and its citizens never voted for, part of the architecture of his rise. That is not a comfortable conclusion. But it is the one that the documentary record, examined honestly and without sentiment, consistently supports. History rarely offers clean villains or clean heroes, only decisions, and their consequences.